Okay, let's take Michael 5 into iCLone. So this is the DAS interface. It will take you a bit of getting used to. I find it a quirky program, which is my nice way of saying I find it very annoying. Obviously, I use it because it is the main thing around and it does its job. Hopefully, you'll see this setup when you come in. This is the default workspace when DAS is installed, and you have these three main tab areas at the top. So actors, wardrobes and props, pose and animate, lights and camera, and render. These you will not have to worry about at all. For this purpose, what we're doing, we'll be working with these first two tabs here to get the character across into iCLone. Now, so hopefully you'll see this, which is actors, wardrobes and props. This is all your content, and there are also three tabs here. One's called Smart Content, Shaping and Surfaces. These control what you do with any asset you bring in. We obviously have our viewport here, and then on the right we have a scene hierarchy, which you'll see become populated when we start putting stuff in. The first thing we want to do is get a figure in. Now, by default, up here under Files, you'll see that it's selected all, and literally this is a big long list of everything on the system. So to make it easy and narrow down, we can come down here and just click on Figures, and this will show you all of the actors on your system, as DAS like to call them. So here they are. If you've done all your installs, Michael 5 should be available, and here he is. He comes in Heroic and Michael 5. Heroic's obviously a more muscly version, so I've been working with the Michael 5 since I didn't think we were working with a bodybuilder. So to get that in, you simply just double click on it and it'll put that asset into the interface. And there we go. We have Michael 5. So there he is. He's obviously naked at this stage. All DAS characters are. If you're keen to have genitalia, then that can be applied, but as you can see, he's free of that at the moment. So as it stands, we want to get this character into iCLone, but obviously we want some clothing on him, so we don't want to send him naked. Now, although, as I mentioned in the previous video, the hair is an issue going across, the clothing is not, and that's because it's actually attached to the body very tightly and morphed with the body, so that goes across fine. So we need to get some clothing. So back to this area over here, and there's a number of sections, but the one we're after is wardrobe, and this should display everything that's currently installed on your system, and it'll say wardrobe. So these are all the assets that were recently you've recently purchased, as well as ones which are come default with DAS basically. Now, one of DAS's little quirks is putting stuff on characters. Surprise, surprise. Some of these assets come in ready textured, so when you put them on the character, they are textured, which is great. But for sometimes, and I have no idea why, they just are not textured at all and they're blank, and you have to put the materials on yourself. So that's what's going to happen in this process, because that's what I've discovered with these particular assets. There's two ways to put an asset on. You can simply click on it and drag it out and drop it on the character, who will highlight, and the asset goes on. As you can see, this one doesn't have any textures on it yet. And here's the pants I've been using. This is a casual 25 pants. The other way to put them on is you can right click here and go merge into scene, and that will do exactly the same thing. There we go. So that's now put the pants on, and obviously for good measure boots. So I'm just going to merge into scene. So we've now put clothing on him, but no textures. Not very useful. So the next up is to do materials. There are a range of materials that come in the system. Now, your natural reaction would be to just pop up here to the materials library and put some materials on. But as you'll see, life's not that simple. These are lighting materials, HDR studio stuff, nothing to do with the clothing we just put on. So, and the reason for this is you need to focus on the thing that you wish to put the materials on, and it's not in focus yet because we've got nothing selected in the interface. So over here you'll see our hierarchy is now being populated. So this is the Genesis character, this is Michael 5. These are all the bones that you can't see but are in his character. And these are the items we've just been adding. They've appeared down here, as you can see. So the top, the pants, and the boots. So if I highlight the top, you'll notice that it's now focused over here on the smart content on anything related to that particular asset. And as it so happens, there is only one material. So again, we can just drag that out. And the interesting thing you'll note here is it didn't work. And this is one of the quirky annoyances of DAS. I have no idea why this is. I'm sure it's a bug. What it's about, it's just classic. Anyway, it didn't work. It appears that what you have to do is right click on it and go merge into scene, and lo and behold, it works. So a bit of inconsistency there, and that tripped me up, and I'm sure it'll trip anybody else up. So that's that one. So let's do pants. There's a number of materials here, different colors. I've just chose the default first one, but obviously if you want to play around, do so, but I believe you're going to be getting some other clothing anyway. So merge into scene for the pants, select the boots, only one set for that, merge into scene for the boots. So there we go. So there we have our character. Michael 5 has now got clothes. This is a good time to save if you want to come back. So up here, do a save, and give your character a sensible name, obviously. So I have got a scenes directory. I won't talk you through my personal management structure for stuff, but let's I've been obviously doing this before, but I'm just going to call this Malthus version 10 since I've been working away. And what I've done is I said Malthus version 10 from DAS. That's just to show me that this is coming from DAS and is going to go into iCLone, just so I can find it easily. So save that so we can come back to it and don't have to go through all this again. Right, so now before we export this character, we have to do one really important task, which is we need to use the facial pipeline pack to allow us to have access to the lip syncing and all the facial morphs. So to do that, you need to make sure you've got that installed. I've put it into the project folder for your project. This is the contents of the pipeline pack, and the folder interested is called DAS Genesis to iCLone. If we go in here, you'll see this really important file. This is the iCLone face key file. It is a .duf file. It's a DAS file for DAS Studio, and we need to apply that. So we simply just drag it out and drop it on the character. Okay, so and it says this preset contains information for frames beyond the length. So we'll say yes to this because we want it to expand the timeline, and it'll now load in to our system. And if we go to pose and animate, I'm just going to turn off my aspect ratio because I don't need that for this. So you'll see a timeline down here, and what we have going on down here is a frame for every morph target that we want on the character. And the first thing we want to do now, before we do anything, is if you look down here on the right, we want to change this frames per second box to 1. And the reason we're doing this is because this is now bringing everything down into just the things we want to transfer over into iCLone. So with that done, what we have to do is then now is export the thing out. Before we do that, I'll just quickly show you that we actually have something that's working. If I highlight the head, these buttons here are navigation buttons if you haven't figured them out already, but this one here is the focus button, and since I have an object highlighted, you can focus on the whole character, or you can actually select a particular part of the character and then focus on that. So with him focused, if I drag the slider, you can see that each frame is containing expressions, which is what we want to end up inside of iCLone. So these are all the morph targets that drive the lip syncing and everything else. So let's export. We're ready to export now, and we're going to go up to select Genesis, go up to the file menu, and go export. And again, we want to make sure we export a sensible name, so I'm just going to use the same one. I've called this, if you look at the top here, Malthus v10 from DAS. So let's call the FBX file exactly the same, so we know where we are. Malthus v10 from DAS, and save. Now, there's a number of things we have to do in this dialog, which are really important that we have to check before we export out. First off, you need to make sure it looks like this with all these ticked options. So it needs to say figures and morphs. It also needs to say animation, because otherwise we're not going to get the animation timeline that we have down here coming out. And then we just need to check that these over here are ticked. So embed textures, and then these three here. And also we need to check the edit morph export rules. This is important. There should only be one thing in this box. If you have two, sometimes you'll see something called default above this. The reason I don't have that here is because I've already deleted one. If the only thing that should be left in here is final. So if you have another one in the list, select it and use this delete option so that the only one left is this one called final anything bake. So make sure that's set like that and go accept, and we're now ready to accept the dialog and export our character. Now, this is a very lengthy process. It takes quite some time. It might be faster on your system because I think your computer is a tad more powerful than mine. You can see what it's doing. It's just going through and gradually exporting each morph. It's not quick, so I'm going to pause this recording so that you don't have to watch paint dry and I don't have to kind of make up, arbitrary dialogue. And once it's done its job, we'll reconvene. Okay, we're back. That on my system took about 12 minutes, so don't know how long it will take on yours. So I'm just going to save one last time, always good. And we're now ready to go to 3D Exchange. So I'm just going to switch to 3D Exchange. Here we are. So we have our FBX file, and more importantly, we have our FBX file with the morph targets, which is very important. So up here to the open, again navigate to wherever you have saved the asset. So here it is here, Malthus v10 from DAS, and go open. Now, first thing that's going to happen is you're going to get the import FBX dialog, and what's really important about this is you want to make absolutely certain the import animation button is turned on, and this might be set to a different rate. It's probably going to default to 30. You need to set this to 12 samples per second, and make sure adjust material color automatically is on. Okay, so it should look just like this, all these things ticked, and that's set to 12. Now once we've done that, it will now go in and import the file into iCLone, which will take a little while as it builds up everything. Now I paused that to save you waiting all that time while it brought it in, but at the end of the process you'll get this dialog appear, and what's happened is basically 3D Exchange has recognized it's a DAS character, and in particular it's recognized it's a DAS Genesis character. Okay, so and therefore it's offering to set the character up for you, and this is kind of good because you just want to say yes to this button. Okay, so we're just going to say yes, and you'll get this little dialog come up. Now I've yet to find out whether this actually does something, because it says all files in the motion library have been updated, please apply to iCLone to view the result. Well, we don't have any files in the motion library over here, so I don't quite know. I haven't seen any files pop up, but I think it's just safe to ignore it, so I'm just going to OK that out. Right, there we are. So we have our character, he's in. Again, we have his hierarchy visible over here. So here's the Genesis mesh with the clothing down the bottom, and again, this is the bone hierarchy of the character. So actually, that's pretty much it. You'll be glad to know it's actually ready to go. You can just literally send this to iCLone and it'll work. However, I do want to show you that it's working, and also there's a few other bits and pieces we have to do inside here before we do that. So it's ready. Now there's a button here called Apply to iCLone, and I better explain to you what that does before we go any further. There's two ways to get assets in from 3D Exchange into iCLone. You can use the iCLone button here, which will bring up a dialog, and you can use the Apply to iCLone, and if iClone's not running, it'll fire iCLone up and it'll literally send the character into the interface. So it's not saving it to disk, it's literally sending it into iCLone. And once you're in iCLone, it's your responsibility to save the character, otherwise, it'll be gone. So that's what that button does. Before we do that, I'm going to, now if you're not sure where this panel is, you've got the shortcuts all up here. So if you pull down this list, you've got all of these different things. You can of course scroll it, as you know, by putting the hand anywhere, but I tend to just know where I want to go. And the area that I've jumped to is this one called character. This is where you set your character up. So if I select that, this is where we get to our character panel with all the character setup information. And this button here, convert to non-standard, is what you'd normally do if you were kind of building your own character and getting it ready for animation. But in my case, Daz has already done the wiring up of this character for us. Also, not Daz, but 3D Exchanger's already done the wiring up. But I'll show you what it's done, because if I click this now, it'll take us into the rigging side of the package, and you can see the skeleton. It's already in. It's all set very nicely. Now there is some cleanup to do in here before we kind of are really going to be tip-top happy with the character, and we're going to do that kind of now. We can, as I said, we can just send the character across, but there's a few things we just absolutely have to check. But the first thing is, we can choose from this library here. There's a pull down, and as long as this active button is set, then these are the kind of calibration animations that are in here, and you can just select one and preview it, and that basically shows you that your character is functional. So we can just kind of select one of these, and it's just good to go through some of them and see what the character's doing, see if it's working nicely, like so. So there we go. That's kind of that's all working. So let's go back to the T-pose. So there's a number of things we have to check now with this character. So if I'm going to come out of active, and we have to check the contact points for the hands, and we have to check the contact points for the feet. We also have to check the feet to make sure they're standing on the ground properly, because typically when you bring a character in from another app, there'll be issues about how it's interacting with the ground. If we move around, you'll see we do have a problem. The feet are actually, the soles of the feet are through the ground plane, and that's how the character is going to come into iCLone, and we don't really want that, so we have to kind of fix stuff like that. So we need to look out for things like that before we bring the character into iCLone. The other thing to look out for and to fix, if I go active again and I choose that very first one called head calibration, you'll notice that he's supposed to have his hands on his hips, and they're not. They're sort of off to one side. That's because the character's come from Daz, and it doesn't fully understand this kind of shape of the character in relation to the ones that are made specifically by Real Illusion as G5 avatars. So we can do a little bit of tweaking of the skeleton position to kind of make these hands kind of fit better on his waist on this particular motion. You're always going to get intersections. You're never going to avoid them. You just need to be, watch out for them. So again, we'll come out of that. So we'll fix that first. That's the easy one to do. And we can just flip this on and off to see whether it's working or not. There, and then turn it off. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this bone here. I'm just double clicked on it. The manipulation controls for altering a bone are the same as they are in iCLone. The interesting thing though is that they're not kind of up here on, they're not always available. Actually, they are. My apologies. It's too early in the morning. So you can either get it here by clicking on it. I tend to use the hotkeys, which are W, E, and R. So that would be E for the rotate. And what we want to do is we just want to rotate the arm just slightly so that when it's active, it's a bit closer to the hip. You can see that that's kind of brought it in a bit closer. And again, I'm just going to use E this time. And just check it. Now the fingers are behind, so we probably need to bring it forward as well. You can see there it's kind of sort of behind the character. So again, I'm just going to bring it forward slightly. Sorry, it needs to be out of active. So to do that, so you kind of have to you have to do this in the T-pose basically before you apply the motion to see how it's working. Okay, so his hand's kind of in the hip, so we need to bring the arm back up a bit, because now that it's forward. Yeah, now getting there. There we go. That's looking pretty good. Yeah, not bad at all. So just need to do that for the other arm too. So let's do that. Just double clicked on that bone. Hit E. Just a bit more. Probably just needs to come up a bit so that it's not. There we go. Okay, so that's looking rather nice. That's looking better. So if we play that, see his hands are on his hips now. You'll get a bit of intersection. You can see a little bit of intersection going on, but you're always going to get that with iCLone characters, no matter what, any 3D character, to be honest. And you typically animate those out as part of your animation process using the motion editor in iCLone, so it's kind of pretty standard. Okay, so we've dealt with the arms and the hands on the hip, so that's that fix. The next thing we have to do is we have to look at the feet on the floor and the hands. We'll do the feet first and see what we can do about this intersection. Now, you can switch this interface to a much more useful mode, which is you can make it orthogonal. So we can go up here to the view menu. You'll see there's a camera projection, and you can have orthogonal, which takes all the perspective away, and that's even kind of more useful if you actually choose one of the other orthogonal views, like right, whatever. So I'm going to choose the right-hand view. So we now have an absolute orthogonal view here of our character. To move around, I'm using hotkeys, but obviously you know that the camera pan, although these are exactly the same as in iCLone, I'm holding down the Alt key and using my left mouse button to pan at the moment. Right, you can see quite clearly the shoes through the ground. This is the actual ground plane here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to straighten the foot out. At the moment, as you can see, it's a slight tilt on it. It's a bit of an odd bit of modelling. I mean, I'm not sure I want to wear a shoe like that, but I'm not going to say anything. It's not about that. But what I am going to do is I'm just going to select this bone by double clicking on it. This is the foot bone. You can see it, it's the left foot. It's shown up in the tree. I'm going to just scroll this to the right. Yeah, here's one of my annoyances about 3D Exchange. You can't change these panel sizes. There's no drag to make it wider. I have no idea why. A bit silly, especially with something like a hierarchy like this. So there's the left foot and there's the right foot. You can select in here or you can select here. That one was the closest, so therefore it's selected the left. And what we're going to do is we're just going to rotate this so that it looks a bit more sensible. There we go. Now, having done that to that one, I can either double click and try and select the one behind, or I can just do it the easy way and select it up here. There we go. Right. So that's the foot. And now it's through the ground, so we need to raise that, and that's done with the panel up on the right here. So if we have a look up here, we have foot, and we have the overall control for the character. Now to do this, we need to be in active mode. And once we're in active mode, you'll see that the character jumps back into its T-pose position. Actually, we've got head calibration on, so I'm just going to put it back into T-pose. You can't tell because it's all off the top of the screen. And what we've got here is we've got height off the ground. So there's this chap here, and you can see as I push that, his feet are going up. So that's kind of. So we're just making a judgment about where he's standing, basically. Didn't hit preview. There we go. That's better. Always good to do this in with a T-pose on. The T-pose is the default for kind of rigging characters. Right, so there we go. We have our character, and we've just lifted the feet up and we straightened them. So that's kind of good. They're now going to look good. So if I go back to the view menu and switch back, you can use Control Q for this, by the way. And I'm spinning around with with Alt and the right mouse button, which is the shortcut for that. There we go. Okay, so the feet are looking good. What we have to do now is we have to check what's called the foot contact and the hand contact. And what these are, it's the actual telling iCLone the exactly where the flat of the hand is, or the sole of the foot is, so that when you try to place it on something in iCLone using human IK, it knows where the bottom of the foot is exactly for the geometry. And that's done in this dialog here in the middle of the foot one. If you go to this little floor contact, and what you'll do as soon as you do that, you'll notice we've got all these little light sort of bluey green boxes, and this is what we have to alter to actually allow us to get the foot contact sorted. So to do that, we need to basically make sure these fit around the character nicely. At the moment, they're not quite right. The foot sticking out over here a bit, and in fact that shows up something that we might want to have a look at. There's a bit of rotation on the feet here, which I haven't fixed. I kind of did the rotation down, but I didn't do the rotation left right. As you can see, they're pointing out a bit. So before I do the foot contact, I'm going to pop back to here and come out of active, and I'm just going to select the feet again, and I'm going to straighten them. So there we go. So that'll make the foot contact stuff easier. The other thing we want to do before we go back to foot contact is we want to look at the stance of our character, because that's something we want to just alter very slightly. His feet are quite close together, which for iCLone we want to have a bit wider. So you'll notice we did the height earlier, but there's a spacing up here. See this one? This is spacing, and you can just spread his feet apart. And I'm just clicking and dragging with the mouse here, so let's give him a little bit of spacing. There we go. That's looking good. Right, back to foot contact. So let's have a look at these chappies. Now we'll probably see that they look a bit better in relation, but they're not kind of quite right. We want this one to be out on the edge of the foot here and here. We also want to check that they're actually level on the ground in relation to the foot. So what we have to do is go back to our orthogonal view, which will make life a bit easier. So orthogonal, and let's choose right hand view. And to move these, you can just literally just click on them. They're actually adjustable, and as soon as you click on them and move them, you'll notice that they've snapped to realize we made some alterations to the character, so they've adjusted themselves, which is fine. And I'm bringing it down to show it where the ground plane is, and it's the bottom of the cube we're after. It's touching on the ground there, so that's cool. That's brought them down. And if you're not sure what's happening, I'm doing this orthogonal because I want to see exactly where the ground plane is, but if I come out of orthogonal, I'm just going to use Control Q for that and spin around just so you can see what I'm doing. I'm actually adjusting. I've been adjusting it that way, so that's exactly what I've been doing when I've been doing that. The other thing we want to do is we want to make sure this next one in needs to be lined up where the toe bone is. This is the toe bone here, this chap. So we just want to bring that forward so that the cursor is up there. That's good. And then the last thing we want to do, which I'm going to go back to orthogonal for, and back to, I'm going to hit S for side view here to save me constantly having to go up the menu. So now that with that done, I'm just going to double check, and we're going to move this out, and we want this to be kind of at the back of the foot, so that's where this one needs to be. It's almost like he's standing on a sort of rectangle, a bit of rectangular card. That one wants to be at the front of the foot, so there we go. So Control Q, back out again. If we spin round, so we've made that a good adjustment now. The only thing we have to do is this left to right one, so we've kind of made the adjustment that way and the floor contact, but now we just have to make them adjust them left to right here. So for that we want the front view, so Control Q to orthogonal, F for front view, and zoom in. I'm using the mouse wheel, by the way, to zoom in. So again, grab this one and slide it out so it's just outside the foot. Grab this one, slide it out so it's just out the inner. Now you'll notice here that they're pairing, they're ganging, and this foot isn't quite in the same position, because when you adjust one side of these, it's adjust the other one. So that means this foot is slightly sort of out on the spacing front because of the stance. So we can fix that by just grabbing this bone and going to E and just making a bit too much of an adjustment. You can of course make an adjustment over here if you want. If it's I'm just going to make a much finer adjustment. So that was going to 6.6, so let's go 7.6. Let's go 7.0. Right, let's come out of that, see what that looks like. No, still not quite there. I mean, this doesn't have to be perfect, so it's not the end of the world. I mean, you can play around with this yourself, because otherwise I'll be here forever. So, fine. So with that set up, what we want to do is we want to do the hands. So I'm going to do Control Q and go back to perspective. And we need to do the same for the hands. If you look up here, you'll see the hands have got the same thing going on with these little cubes. And we need to arrange these so that they're on the flat of the hand in a particular place. So again, let's do the same thing again. I'm going to go orthogonal, front view, and then zoom in on this particular hand. We're just having a look at where these are. So I'm just going to grab this one, slide it out to the end of the finger. So that wants to be kind of end of the furthest finger out. This one wants to be on the wrist, so we want to bring this one back to the wrist, which is right about there. And this middle one needs to line up with the knuckles, so I'm just going to put it back and switch to different view to kind of. Now notice sometimes when you move one, it moves both. I should have done that one first and then this one, so silly me. Right, Control Q, let's have a zoom round. Okay, so I'm going to go to a top view now. Can't remember the shortcut for that, so let's go to camera view and top, which is G, orthogonal, scroll over, Alt, left mouse button. I'm just going to bring that in. So basically we just want to line it up with along here with the kind of flat of the hand. Because we've moved the hand forward, it's at a slight angle, but we're basically just telling iCLone where the flat of the hand is, so that when he puts his hand on a table or something like that using human IK, it knows where the palm of the hand is to be able to kind of do that basically. Okay, so again, just double check the wrist area. So if we bring that to there, so that we're roughly on the wrist, roughly across the knuckles with those, and roughly across the fingertips with that. So it's front view. Just double check it from the front view. So because his hand's at a slight angle, I'm just going to compromise and put it here so that the center of the palm of his hand is kind of sorted. I'll probably have to spend a bit more time looking at the exact contact stuff, but this is a rough setup, and once I've gone through this again, maybe we'll get a kind of tighter way of doing this. But it's best to do it at least to this basic level. Otherwise, if you do want the character to grab something inside of iCLone, it could get a bit messy and not work very well. This one doesn't look too bad at all, actually. Very slight adjustments. So top view, which is G, I now remember. G key. Okay, and yeah, that's pretty good. So actually, pretty good. Okay. Control Q. Home I'm going to use. There we go. Okay, so what we've done now is we have done the hand contact, we've done the foot contact, we've done a bit of correction on the feet for them intersecting with the ground. That's all done. Now there's one final thing we have to do that's really important before we convert this character, and that is save a profile. So I've just spent all these minutes making these adjustments to the character. If I go back to Daz and transfer him by changing his clothes and transfer him again, I don't want to have this bone adjustment, all these little adjustments. I don't have to do that again, because that's obviously losing time. So the shortcut for that is to save what's called a character profile. It's basically going to save the amendments I've made to this bone structure into a file, and in future when the character comes in from Daz Studio, I can just go to this profile, click load, and bang, all that work's done for me instantly. So to do that, go up to the menu, and at the very top you'll see it says characterization profile, and we simply just go save. You'll notice I had one earlier when I was doing V8, so I'm just going to copy that and call this version 10 because that's the current version of our character. Now, important, you need to save these somewhere. This is not inside the iCLone directory, you'll notice, because this is a character profile. So you'll need to, if you have a project for, on your system for this particular Malthus character, just make a sensible place where you know where to find these profiles. You could make it in the Real Illusion directory structure, but you'll have to make a new directory because there isn't a place for them basically in the standard Real Illusion install, because it's all to do with 3D Exchange. So I have your project here. I have a thing called Projects Mysterious Movies 3D Transfer. That's the way I have my system set up. So I'm just going to save it into this directory, which is where the transfer data is for the moment, and just be consistent, find somewhere good to save it. So here it is, and it's called a 3DX profile. I'm just going to go save. That's now done, and if I come out of active mode, you'll notice there's a load button, and that's now become active. That means that at any time, if this character has come back from Daz with new clothes on, I can simply just select this profile, it'll load it up, and it will do all of that work you just saw me doing. It'll just go bosh on the character, done. So that's good. So let's just make the character active again, because when you make it active, that'll basically make this menu down here ready for conversion. So once we've done all that, we hit the convert button down, go convert, and it comes up with this dialog again. No idea. Let's just say okay. Right. So we've now converted the character. Now it's interesting, I don't know if you noticed about 3D Exchange, but there's no way to save your project as you go. This is a live project, so if my computer crashed now, I would lose everything, because what they expect you to do is export this character when you're done into the package of your choice. There is no kind of format up here to basically save a 3D Exchange project with everything I've just done at the point in time that I'm at right now. That would be really useful. So mention that to Kai, because you can't always sit here and do what I'm doing without a break. And if you have a break and the electricity goes, all of this is gone, and you have to start again. So don't quite know why they haven't implemented some kind of project save. Right, sorry, moan out of the way. Now this character is ready to go to iCLone, but we're not going to send it just yet, because there's one last thing we have to do. Because if you send this character into iCLone, you will notice something about it which you'll suddenly realize is pretty horrible, and that is he's very shiny. If we spin around, you can see the specular on him is pretty awesome. This is just the default way that iCLone, 3D Exchange, has interpreted the materials that have come out of Daz. So there's two things we have to do before we send this in, and I'll show that right now. So we want to deal with the materials. We want to fix these before we go to iCLone. You can do it later, because once the character's in iCLone, you can send it back to 3D Exchange and do this later, but let's get it done now. So up to the menu, and we're looking for material. So that will jump us down to the material panel, and we want to select the material. Now, we can try finding it elsewhere, but if we just select the pipette here, click on an item, that will focus it. It's the Genesis shape basically, which I've chosen, so that focuses it. That then lets us choose all the materials that are currently in the character, and here they all are. So you can select them off the list, or you can click on them. Some of them you won't be able to click on, because obviously if you click on his legs, his skin of his legs, well, you'll get his pants, because he's covered by pants, and as you can see, I've picked his pants up. So sometimes you'll have to actually go through this list. So I've just chosen his face, and if we look down here, the two culprits are the specular and glossiness sliders. They're way too high. So if you look here, I'm just dialing up and down the spec. So for me, a happy compromise is 10 for both of these numbers. I'll do the same for glossiness, 10. Glossiness controls the spread of the specular across the object. So if I turn it up again and I play with glossiness, you can see the more glossy the object is, the tighter the specular highlight. So it's like a billiard ball. And the less glossy the object, the more matte the surface is, which means that the the lights are distributed across it in a much flatter way. I, for the moment, have chosen 10 for both of these, but if you don't like that look in iCLone, well, you now know how to change it. So that's done the head, but as you notice, it's not done the neck because the character's split into individual material assignments, which is what we've got up here. I can continue clicking with the pipette, but sometimes you miss something, especially, as I said, if you want to do the legs, even though you can't see them if you want to do them for good measure. So you might want to start working with the pull down menu. Some of these you don't necessarily need to change. For example, you don't want to change the iris and the cornea because they're highly reflective objects that you're expected to be shiny. So at the moment I've only really dealt with the actual skin. So anything that has the word skin in it I've dealt with. So the next one on the list down here is let's have a look. Well, we've got skin foot, so let's do that one. So again, down to the bottom, and 10 and 10. And skin arm, 10 and 10. Skin torso, 10 and 10. Sorry. Do his nipple for good measure. I know it doesn't say skin, but it's his nipple and it's on his chest. Hey, let's do his nipple. Skin neck. 10 and 10. Skin forearm. Skin leg, of course, which we can't see because it's hidden by his pants. Skin head we did because we did that by actually selecting him with the pet. So let's do the hand. The other thing we want to look at is the lips. His lips are very glossy. Your call on this. So again, have a look and play around, you can see how shiny his lips are. Sorry, I hit the scroll wheel on the mouse then, and it was actually still focused on the. Okay, so if I zoom in a bit, we can see his lips are shiny. If they're too shiny for you, then again, just find something that works for you on the glossiness front. You might want a little bit of shine on them, more than I had. So I've put it down to 50. That's looking a bit better. Looks like he's got slightly wet lips. I missed the ears. The ears must be a separate thing. So see how shiny they are. Are they separate or not? No, they're part of the head, and they seem to be just slightly shiny for some reason. Pass. No idea. Right, okay, there we go. Now the other thing we have to do is we have to do the clothing as well. Don't forget to do the clothing because they're going to have this huge specularity on them too. And in fact, for some reason, the glossiness is off the scale on these. I have no idea why. It was like set to 900. I'm just going to have to do 1010. Again, if you don't like these looks inside, when you get them in iCLone, then you can actually just send the character back to 3D Exchange from iCLone, make the amendments, and then update it, and you'll be fine. So that's pants. He has a swag shirt, which again might want a bit of gloss shininess on it, but you see the specular there, it's quite extreme. So 10's probably fine. Right, we're pretty much done. I don't think he's got any. Oh, boots. Yes, I haven't done. We've got boots. Right, so the boots are quite matte. You might want them possibly a bit shiny. You never know. So if we up the specular, you can see what it's doing to the boots. So you can decide if you want them shiny or not. Let's go with 50 and 15. And there is a left and right boot, so don't forget to do the other one because I've only just done the one. You see, left swag boot. There is a right swag boot, and we want to make sure that one's done too. So I think we said 50 and 15. The soles, don't forget, it's listed the soles as a separate material, so the heel, sorry. So let's just do those. They're rubber, so I'm just going to do 10 and 10 on both of those. 10 and 10. There we go. Right, character's pretty much done on the materials, but there's one last thing to do, and this is called double-sided. These are single poly meshes, and I don't know how much you know about CG, but polygon is a flat surface that's infinitely thin, and technically it only has one side, unlike a sheet of paper, which is, of course, has two sides and has an actual physical thickness. So in computer land, in the wonderful world of computers, you can have an object that has no one side only and no side on the other, and that's fine. But when you actually have something that is like a thin piece of clothing, then the problem is that it doesn't work properly. And I'll show you this. If you look very carefully at this collar here, you'll notice that it seems to disappear and there's nothing on the inside. But if I pan around, well, oh, look, suddenly we have a bit of geometry. Well, that's a one-sided polygon. We're seeing this side of it, and as we turn around, there's no rear to it, so we're seeing straight through to his neck. So that's a bit ugly, because obviously it's not natural. The same thing's happening with his waistcoat. Look, if you look at the waistcoat, you can see it wraps around the back and it just disappears. Well, again, that's because you can't see the inside of it, because it's got this normal that's facing one way. So to fix that, we again just want to select these items. So if I go and click and go, let's do this one first. That gets us the swag vest. And the thing we're after down here is called two-sided. So if you click on that, bingo, you'll notice we've got two-sided now. And we'll do the same with all the clothing, because it'll have the same problem. Two-sided. And if we're not sure we're getting one, we'll just look down here. There's only 3 items. There's the pants, so let's do the pants, make them two-sided. Right, there we go. Well, that is it. Our character is actually now ready to go in to iCLone. So we've basically dealt with the rig, we've dealt with the materials, so it's export time. Now, as I said, we could hit the apply to iCLone button and send it that way, but we do not want to do this because it doesn't always send everything with it. I prefer to save the character into the library. In particular, there's some settings you need. So let's just make sure he's selected and go hit the iCLone button up here, and this is the export to iCLone menu. It'll pick up the name you brought it in as, which is up here, so it's kind of offered the name up of Malthus v10 for DAS, which is fine. This is really important. Make sure embed external textures is set. Okay, if you don't do this, the textures will be corralled into a folder on your hard drive and left there, and they'll just be pointed to the materials that are assigned to the character. And if you then decide to send the character to somebody like I did to you yesterday, then none of those textures will go, and the person will kind of say, well, where are all my textures? The iCLone format allows the textures to be embedded inside the actual 3D file, so make sure embed textures is on. I've set the textures to 1024 because the DAS ones are pretty good, but I wouldn't go any higher than that for the moment, because iCLone's a real-time engine. If necessary, we can experiment with that and see how far we can push it. And then you wanted to set where you want to go. Now, default, we'll put it into just the custom folder in iCLone. That's where it'll go. So let me show you where that is. I'll switch to iCLone. So here's the actor tab, and here is your custom tab. And by default, this is where the button in Exchange will throw your character. Okay. Now, I like to be very organized with characters, and as you can see, there's plenty of folders here. This is a template one, but under custom you can actually make folders. So for example, here's the ArmadaCon job, here is your mysterious movies, and if you've got familiar with iCLone, you'll know you can just make a folder here. This is mimicking the hard drive structure. What you're seeing here is exactly what's in your hard disk. So when you make a folder here, a folder gets made in your hard drive in the Real Illusion install area. So if I go to character, you can just go up here and go, make a new folder, which is basically what I've done. And I made a mysterious movies folder. So there we go, my previous attempts. So I prefer to put things exactly where I want it. If I want to put it into this mysterious movies folder under actors, because this is the project I'm currently working on, which I am, then I want to tell it exactly where to go. So I've chosen the other option, and you then click the browser, and then you browse to where you want the thing to go. So in my case, I have, you go down into the Real Illusion custom, iCLone 5 custom, and then you find the character folder, and that's where that folder would have been created. So once you create that character in iCLone, you can create it here if you want, and it will show up. But if you haven't remembered to do it already inside of iCLone, so there's Mysterious Movies. That's where I want my character to go, and that's where iCLone's going to put it. So there we go, and we're ready to go. Now I'm not going to export animation because there isn't any. He's got morph targets on him. The animation is going to be done inside of iCLone. But if we had populated the character with animation and stuff and motion clips, then that's what this section is for. We'll deal with that on another day. Okay, so I'm just going to put that texture size back to 1024, embed textures, and hit OK. And we're done. So let's go to iCLone. Now, this is typical, and I think I mentioned this in my email. He's not here. Actually, I think he is. No, there he is. Sometimes this doesn't refresh, and you don't see the character. And you have to, in fact, it did do that because the actual one is called from Daz. So the thing doesn't refresh when you send something. So all you have to do is move away to another folder and come back again, and it refreshes. And there he is. So I'm just going to go send him. There we are. Now, he has no hair, so we have to do the hair, of course. The hair is a prop, so we need to get that out of Daz Studio. So it's a bit sluggish because iCLone doesn't like the screen recorder I'm using. Right, so let's deal with the hair. So there he is. He will work. So if we go to the animation tab and go to motion and go motion puppet, then basically there he is. He's fully functional. So motion puppet works. And if we go to face puppet, he's working. And if I focus on his head, just so you can see, and let's go to face cam. So chuck. So as you can see the expressions and all that. That's all function. That's the morph targets come over from 3D Exchange. And to prove a point, onto facial animation. Here's the lip sync test that came with the facial pipeline pack. Now you won't be able to hear this audio because I've got audio capture for computer turned off, but he's now citing the letters of the alphabet. Okay, so that's just a lip sync test. So he's functional. Right, so having done that, we need to have hair. So let's go do hair. So back to Daz. So in Daz, I'm just going to go new, file new, because we want to start fresh. I'm going to go back to wardrobe, actors and props. And we want to just get the hair. We don't need the character or anything like that. It's a single item, and in Daz you can kind of add it anyway. So under the actors wardrobe, here's hair, and as you can see, these are all the hairs that have come in with the recent purchases. The one you said you liked was the GNK Nikki hair, so double click and send that in. And there it is, the hair. Now I'm going to do nothing to this hair other than export it immediately because we want it inside of iCLone, inside of 3D Exchange. So go up to the export menu. Now what's important about this is we need to export in a different format. If you export in FBX, we literally get the same problem we had before, which is we get this weird extra rig being put in which breaks everything, and we don't want that. So the best way to export, I've discovered, is to choose OBJ as the exporter option. So down here, wavefront OBJ on the list, and we'll call this, you didn't see I did one earlier called Nikki Hair, so I'm just going to highlight that. And let's just call this Nikki Hair version 2. So we're saving it as an OBJ file, so just go save as. A dialog will come up, and we just need to make sure that these options are selected down here. So just have a little look at this for a moment. Ignore invisible nodes needs to be ticked. You need to write UV coordinates, normals, and object statements. Under write groups, it should be set to use existing groups. And then you want to make sure that write surfaces, write material library is selected, but also collect maps selected. That's also very important. So if you've got all of that, then we go accept. Let's put that out. And now we're going to go back to 3D Exchange. So I'm just going to go and open and find Nicky here, and there it is. Now the interesting thing about this is these are dense meshes. I mean, the Nicky hair has got a lot of polys in it, just like the Daz main character has. I think I managed to crash. Yes, I've crashed 3D Exchange. Excuse me, I'll be back in a moment. That was really useful. Let's try again. Probably the moral of the story is, do a new before loading anything in. Maybe, who knows? But software. And this is again a fairly big object, so I'm just going to pause this while it loads. Okay, it took a while, but it eventually made it. So here's the hair in all its glory inside 3D Exchange. First thing we need to do is we need to drop it to the ground, because if we zoom back out, it's actually way up in the air and floating. That's fine, but it will still work with the character. But the point about which the hair rotates, either the gizmo that you might want to grab to move it around or rotate it, is actually down here on the floor at the bottom when you get inside of iCLone. So what I'm going to do is use a feature over here. So if you're not in the right place, just go to the top, very top thing, and with the Nicky hair selected, you'll notice there's a thing called align to ground over here on the right. You just want to click that, and as you can see, it drops the hair to the ground. So if I now focus in, we're now sort of on the ground, or as effectively on the ground as we need to be. As you can see, it's the lowest point of the mesh, which is actually touching the ground. So that drops it to the ground, which means that the pivot point around which it rotates will be down here too when we get it into iCLone. So that's kind of cool. So we're ready basically to do the export into iCLone. So with Nicky hair selected up here in the tree, you need to select the item you want to export, otherwise it complains. Go to export to iCLone. Again, it's offered the name of the file, which is taken from the OBJ file, so it's called Nicky hair v2. I didn't mention the target version, but if you do have more than one version of iCLone installed, they'll pop up here, but I've only got iCLone 5. So again, I'm going to leave the texture size again, make sure it's embedded. I have to change this because this is actually a prop. Remember I said it's not hair, it's a prop. And of course, actually no, it's done it for me. If you look there, it's kind of been quite clever. It's gone custom, iCLone, custom, and it realizes it's a prop. And it's also remembered my previous install, which is the Mysterious Movies. So I've got a props directory called Mysterious Movies. So that's good. It's going to put exactly where I want it. As I said, you can always use the default option and move it later, but for me that's fine. So let's just go and export. It says no mesh node is selected. Please select the target nodes before exporting. So that's my mistake. What we have to do is select these two chaps here, rather than the top one at the root. Just select those two. I'm not 100% sure why. I'm sure I'll figure it out. Let's try again. There we go, successfully exported. So time to pop back to iCLone. So that is of course a prop, so it's under set, and under custom, and as you can see, there's my Mysterious Movies folder. So you can see I was playing around earlier with hairs. So here's the Nicky hair 2 that we just created, and to get into the scene we can either use this button or double click, and it'll go in by his feet, because as you say, that's where we dropped it to the ground inside of iCLone. So what we need to do is we need to now position it on his head. We can do that with the usual move tools. So again, up here, and just pull it up. And because we're doing the head now, I'm going to focus in on it. And of course, with that object selected, if I hit home, it'll focus on the head only, which is good. And sorry, my interface is a bit sluggish, but that's the screen recorder doing its thing with. And we're watching for the intersections. Notice there's some this is the transparency map on the hair that makes it kind of look nice at the very edges. So I just want to make sure that's not colliding with the whole thing. I might do a little bit of scaling. You can play around with it until you're really happy, and then just slide it back to give the ear a bit more clearance. Okay. Well, we'll do that for now, and of course, now that you know how to do this, you get to do all of this yourself, of course, which is great. So there's the hair, but it's not attached to him yet, and this is important because obviously if you animate him now, it ain't going to go with him. So what we have to do is we have to link his hair to his head. So now, when I say link, we don't want to link, my apologies. If we look here, there are a number of ways. Here's linkage. And we need to just quickly tell you the difference between what a link is and what an attach is, okay? If I link his hair to his head and animate him, it will work absolutely perfectly. But when I save this actor into the library, which I'm going to do in a moment with the hair on, because obviously I would like him to come out with hair on each time I use him, you'll be surprised to find he's bald again, and that's because the hair didn't get saved as part of the profile of the actual actor. It's a separate prop, and we can see that. You can see here's the avatar and here's the prop. So we don't want to use link. We want to use sorry, just select that again. So we don't want to use link. What we want to do is we want to use attach. So I'm going to click pick parent, and I'm going to click on his head. Change the panel there. Let's just scroll back up. Yeah. So if you look, it says attach, and it's attached to the head now. Okay. And you'll notice what's happened. The prop has disappeared from the scene manager, from the props, and it's actually now a child of the avatar, and that's what we want, because now when we save the avatar, the hair will get saved with it. Also notice the avatar's got a bad name. It's root node. That name's come from 3D Exchange. So if we go back, that character's not in there anymore. Obviously this isn't a lot of use, but we can fix that. So we can rename it, as you know. So I'm just going to double click and call it Malthus version 10. And if we go to the actor tab and go to avatar, so here's all the Malthuses. So that was Malthus v10 from Daz. So I'm just going to call this Malthus v10. Or if you want to call it iCLone or whatever, just so you know that it's the final one, or Malthus with hair. So we could do that. I mean, yeah, basically whatever. Hair, and of course Nick AK if you want to be specific about the hair he's wearing. So now that I've made that modification, I can save him. Now I can overwrite the one from Daz, in which case he's completely overwritten, but the bald one. But or you can just make a new one, and I'm just going to make a new one just by adding. So this is now going to make another avatar in the library, and I'm just going to call him Malthus hair v10 as per what I've just named him in the scene manager. There we go. So that character is now in iCLone with hair and animatable. So when you basically go to the motion panel, he'll do whatever, and the hair will go with him. So if we just go animation, in fact I won't even bother with that. Let's just put a run on. Yeah, lovely, whatever. Where did the hair go? That's a bit strange. I'll tell you what. This is the classic thing. It's when you do stuff and you're not on the at frame 0 on the timeline. Remember that one? Not terribly useful, because I'd love to have a button that fixed that. So because we've done that, I'm just going to delete him, and I'm going to bring him back out of the library. And I suspect what's happened is when I moved the hair, I wasn't at frame 0, which meant it animated into position. As you can see, it has done. So the hair's on the floor, and that's because there is an animation on it. Very annoying after I did the positioning. So easy enough to fix, but as I say, I run into this all the time. It infuriates me. The transform key will be somewhere else on the timeline. Oh, yeah, where are we? And I need to select the right character actually, which I haven't done, so I need to get the prop from here. This is interesting. It's because it's now a sub of the character, it's actually not showing up in the timeline panel, which is really useful. Because it's no longer a prop and it's a child of the avatar, it's not showing up in the timeline, so I'm going to probably have to detach him. So where it's attached to the head, I'm just going to detach. Puts it back into the prop category in the scene manager. You can see that there. And since it's selected, I'm just going to focus it. So there's Nikki hair. There it is, little pesky beggar. That is the keyframe that we don't want, and that needs to be dragged back and dropped at frame 0. There we go. And now, of course, we just have to reattach. Pick parent and pick the head. There we go. See those little things in iCLone that trip you up all the time. Okay, so we've modded him now, so let's go back to avatar and Malthus hair and make sure he's selected. I didn't have him selected, I had the hair selected. And select him and do an overwrite. Okay, so that's, and then let's get animation panel, and we will do motion puppet this time, and let's do basic run preview. There we go, that's better. Hair that stays with him. Right, there you go. Okay, so we have a character. It's got everything on it. It's come in from iCLone. I hope that all makes sense. And you know, let me know how you get on. Take care for now.